What inspired you to go into teaching, and especially players, and studying players?
I did my master's degree at Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut, and I majored in theater. And I knew that when I completed that program in 1957, that I wanted to start a theater program somewhere. And I found out that there were no theater programs in Connecticut. I surveyed all of the schools, and then when I interviewed for a job here, they told me that they were looking for somebody to begin a theater program.
Yeah, so what was like the first play at Staples?
In 1958 or 9, I'm not sure which, maybe it was that school year, the play that we chose, and the students selected this, was You Can't Take It With You, a Kaufman and Hart comedy.
Okay, so what was like the most memorable thing about doing your first play with players?
Well, I was the director, and I was the producer, and I was the technical director. I was doing everything. And I'll tell you, if we hadn't had the kind of student body we had and parents, it would have been impossible for me to have done the job I did. People were wonderful in volunteering to help. And so parents and friends of the school volunteered to help with the stage sets and with the publicity and advertising and promoting the play, even selling tickets and so forth. They were wonderful.
So like the biggest struggle when you were starting players was really you were doing everything, and then the community really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like, what was the biggest moment you cherished from just being director at players?
Well, certainly it's the kids. It's the students. And just yesterday I received a letter from a young man who graduated in 1966. And he was regretting that he couldn't come to the reunion, which we have planned for Memorial Weekend. This was a young man who was so talented, and was in A Midsummer Night's Dream, among other plays, during his 3 years, and chose teaching as a career. He's now living in Georgia. But to write and say that he regretted he couldn't be here because so much of his life had been affected by the years that he was in the players, and he really wanted to reconnect with all of us again.
I know that was probably your biggest moment, the kids overall in directing players and being a part of it. And what do you think was perhaps the best play, or the best part of Staples Players as a whole throughout its history?
It's a good question. You know, it's very difficult to pick out one production or one group of kids, because certainly the plays themselves were wonderful, and the students were excellent. But the one that does stand out in my mind is the War and Pieces, and I think that's the poster right there of that psychedelic era, 1966 or 67, and that play was entirely written by the students in the high school, and they pieced together, that's the point, it was an anti-war play, and then they selected pieces around the theme of war and said that we are against violence and against war. And they were making a very, very dramatic statement to the community, which was a mixed reception, because some people were very much for the war in Vietnam, and other people were not. So it was a very controversial production.
Yeah, I was looking on the players' website, and you were saying they brought it to the UN, or?
That's right.
Yeah.
That was part of the Soviet Union cultural exchange from the United Nations to the Soviet Union. And we sent the playbook with all the publicity. It was a huge book we put together, sent it to the United Nations. The United Nations sent it to the Soviet Union as part of that. The reason it was chosen because it had won the Connecticut Drama Festival, the New England Drama Festival, and the Moss Hart Award for Plays of the Free World. So it was a winner in every sense.
Were there any other really controversial plays like that, or that throughout, either when you were directing?
Not
or?
Controversial, no. That was controversial because of the time. It was just the right time to do that sort of thing.
I'm going to go back a little bit. I know we've had a lot of famous alumni, like, for example, Christopher Lloyd. Like, when did he come in? What
He was here, actually, the same year that I was here. And Christopher Lloyd was not a student. He loved theater, but he didn't care very much about going to classes or what have you. So the principal of the school invited him to seek other options in his life, because he wasn't going to classes and so forth. So I heard about this, and I spent some time with him, and I negotiated with the principal to have him stay on for a while in school and to work with me in the theater department. And he was an enormously talented man, as the future predicted, as was predicted working with me, and then and came to pass in his career.
Were there any other students like that, not necessarily famous, but that you feel that you've really influenced?
Right. I always tell the story that one night my wife and I were sitting right here, and we were watching a couple of programs, and we don't do this very often, but we were watching two or three. One was a 2-hour-long program, and the other, I think, was an hour. But in the 3-hour course, we saw 7 of our students on the television screen.
Wow.
Graduates of Staples High School. One was doing commercials, or 2, I think, were doing commercials, and then one was a dramatic production, and Mariette Hartley was the girl, and she was starring in that production, and several others. And I said, isn't this a wonderful community to have generated this sort of talent?